Hi, my name is Pluto. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my experience on silent meditation retreat. First, I wanted to express my sincere condolences for anyone involved in the horrific shootings that took place last night and yesterday. It just really breaks my heart to see this continue to unfold, and truly we as a nation have a really serious problem with gun violence that we can't ignore forever because people are dying. So I just want to put that out there. I hope that you are doing okay wherever you are, dear listener, and stay safe. I've never done any videos about my past experiences on retreat. Having been on retreats for the past 4 years, I'm starting to finally feel more able to talk about it. It can be such a complex and internal experience. I think it's really difficult to sum it up. And often if you meet someone who's recently been on retreat and you ask them how was their retreat, they're probably gonna feel a bit flummoxed as to what to say to you. And many of us will actually prepare a prefabbed one-sentence response to give you so that we don't sound like total idiots. For instance, I will often say when someone says, "How was your retreat?" I'll say a little bit of everything. One reason I want to make this video is that there are a lot of myths and urban legends out there about what a meditation retreat is like. And so I want to offer my experience, what I've gained from it, and tell you a little bit about how a meditation retreat might work. The first thing I'll say is that there are many different kinds of meditation and therefore many different kinds of meditation retreats. I attend retreat in the Vipassana insight meditation style or lineage, and so please keep in mind that my retreat experience comes from that vantage point. When I go on a residential silent retreat, I will typically sign up in advance, and in my case, I've made use of financial aid to help me be able to attend retreats. I've used fellowships for healthcare providers, other types of financial aid, and so just know that if you're not someone who's wealthy and you would like to be able to attend retreats, there are definitely some options and some resources to help you be able to do that. Feel free to comment or send me a message or email if you're interested in getting more information about how to do that. Once the day of my retreat arrives, typically I will go to the retreat center. There's usually a registration or a check-in process. At these retreats, the silence doesn't begin right away. So we'll check in, we'll get unpacked in our rooms. In some retreat centers, you have a single room that you have all to yourself. Other times I might have a roommate. And then once I get settled in, there's usually dinner, there's usually some talks in the meditation hall, and they'll talk about, retreat structure. You'll get training on your yogi job. So most retreat centers will often have like work retreat periods where you might be doing dishes, or you might clean the bathroom, or you might chop vegetables. And this time we call it work meditation, and it's actually a very fruitful time of practice. So that first day, it's really important that you get proper training on your job so that you can minimize the amount of talking that you need to do every day while you're doing your yogi job. After we get all the training and orienting out of the way, they will often talk about what the retreat container is. So what does noble silence means? So when you go on a silent retreat, it's not just about not talking. You also agree to not read, to not write, to not use electronic devices. There's no, oftentimes people will abstain from eye contact, no sexual contact or drugs or alcohol. So there's a whole bunch of things that go into making this really special space that we enter into to practice. At IMS and Spirit Rock, the retreatants will take what's called the refuges and the precepts. So this is a Buddhist tradition, and basically we're saying, we're going to find refuge, we're going to be seeking, knowledge and safety in this place, in this sanctuary, with kind of the truth of the way things are, the community that we're making with each other, and honoring where this came from, if that's what you believe, right, the individual, the Buddha, or you could, think of the archetype of the Buddha. And the precepts are the things, the moral or ethical things that we agree to abide by while we're on retreat, like non-harming, non-stealing, abstaining from sexual activity, abstaining from intoxicants, which of course does not include any prescription medication that you need that your doctor has given you. Most retreat centers are very adamant. We want you to stay on your medication. Like if you are taking something, please don't stop taking that just because you're coming on retreat. Once we take the precepts and the refuges, we then usually will enter into silence. So at that point, when we leave the hall, there's a very different feeling. There's not this buzz or chatter of conversation and connecting. It's really very much about going inward. A typical day on retreat will look pretty similar most retreat centers in the insight meditation tradition. I don't know about other types of retreat centers because I haven't attended those. So my days on retreat typically will begin anywhere from like 5:15 to 6 a.m. Everything is run by bells, right? So you can use a clock if you want to, but anytime something new is happening, like a wake-up call or a new sitting, there's going to be a bell that's rung to let you know that that's happening. So you usually will wake up to a bell being rung, and then you will go do some sitting meditation, and then often it's time for breakfast, and then some people will have their yogi jobs after breakfast. And then typically there's a little bit of time, after you finish your yogi job to kind of relax after breakfast. And then the day will usually start with like sitting meditation and then walking, and it'll alternate 45-minute periods of sitting and walking meditation with meals and, usually a period of movement like yoga or qigong sprinkled in there. And then depending on the teachers, there will be different types of practice offered throughout the day. So a lot of the periods may be more of the open awareness practice, but there also may be instruction on metta or loving kindness practice. And then typically in the evening or the afternoon, there will be a Dharma talk where one of the teachers will talk for about an hour about some different thoughts or teachings or ideas that could be beneficial for us to hear. We have lunch, we have dinner, and usually the sitting and walking will continue to alternate until around 9 or 9:30. And some of my retreats, we will have chanting periods at the end of the day that are optional. And this particular retreat was really lovely. We did a bowing Kuan Yin practice in the evenings as well. That was also optional. And depending on what kind of tradition you go to, like the Goenka tradition, they're very strict that you come to every single sitting period, and they'll actually come. I think they'll come find you if you're not there and make you come. But in this particular tradition, there's a lot of flexibility. If you're I just need to take a nap for this period, no one's gonna come bother you. And they also have a number of other alternate sitting places. So you can sit in the meditation hall, or there's a screened-in gazebo in the forest, or you can sit in one of the informal sitting areas in one of the dorms. So there's a lot of options for you to tailor the retreat to your own practice. So you may ask, while you're sitting, while you're walking, what the hell are you doing? Good question. That could depend on who you're asking, but in the Vipassana tradition, the open awareness practice is where we're attempting as much as possible to be with what is in the moment. So we're noticing anything that's arising, whether that's thoughts, sensations, emotions, anything, and we're simply observing it, hopefully without judgment. At least that's what we're trying to do. And so as we observe, right, we learn to be more present, we learn more about ourselves, and ultimately the goal is not to not have thoughts or to shut down your mind. The goal is just to really sink into the present moment so that we're not being pulled off by this thought, pulled out by that feeling. We're just right here, right now. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of what it is that one does on retreat and what it was that I was specifically doing on retreat. So now I'd like to share with you 5 things that I learned or explored while on this particular retreat. Point number 1, co-regulation is normal. So what does that even mean? So when we talk about regulation, right, as human beings, we're mammals. And so mammals are designed for connection, for relationship. And when mammals are born, we are designed to utilize our caregiver and other mammals in order to help us regulate our emotions. And humans are no exception to this, right? A human baby literally won't survive if it doesn't have another being there to help it regulate its emotions. And our society places a lot of value on independence, but the truth of the matter is that we weren't designed to deal with life on our own. We were designed to deal with it in community, in connection, in relationship with others. So when a person is upset, it's actually very natural and normal for them to seek comfort from other people or other beings, whether that be their cat or their dog. We really weren't designed to regulate all of our emotions by ourselves. Of course, it is good if you have some skills that we call, self-soothing, where, when you're experiencing mild upset, you can deal with that on your own. But at the end of the day, no one can do that forever, right? Self-soothing isn't meant to be the only tool in our tool belt. On retreat, it's pretty common that you start to experience some distressing mind states, distressing thoughts. You might have nightmares. And so, part of what we do in retreat is we work on self-soothing, right? On being with ourselves, on learning that, I can experience this distressing thought or this difficult emotion and still be okay. And at the same time, there are going to be moments where an individual may need to co-regulate. Even though retreat is silent and we're not talking much to other people, we're still in community with each other. And so co-regulation can look like a lot of different things. It could be drinking a cup of tea, sitting near someone that has a soothing presence, simply not talking, just drinking your tea. It could look like going to the yoga period and doing movement with other people and feeling comforted by participating in an activity together. It could look like going to your assigned practice group and telling the teacher and, therefore also the other students witnessing what it is that you're experiencing. In my case, I had a very difficult day of practice. I had been trying all day to regulate, to self-soothe, and I'd been doing all these different things to help myself kind of climb out of this funk, and it just wasn't working. And I was sitting we were doing a period of metta practice where, we're intending towards a sense of loving kindness. And I was feeling anything but loving kindness. If anything, I was feeling, intense feelings of rage. And I was really, really angry at someone, and I was really feeling that anger, and I was imagining, thunder and lightning and rain, and was like, I just wish it would storm. And then all of a sudden there was a thunderclap and rain began pouring down, and I was like, oh my God, did I just cause a storm? Do I control the weather now? Because, when you're not talking, things can get a little, distorted up here. And then I went to my room and I was sort of bugging out about this whole storm thing. And then I was staring intently in my mirror, and then it felt like the mirror started to stare back at me, and I was like, okay, you stay in there and I need some help. So at IMS, there's this thing called the red phone. In the front office, they have a literal, an old school, red rotary phone. And it's connected to the retreat support fellows. So when you pick up the red phone, it automatically dials the on-call retreat support person. So this is a person for when you're having, say you just got a tick bite and you need help getting it off, or like me, you're having some kind of weird, do I now control the weather episode, and you just need to talk to someone. You need some help. So I went into the office and I picked up the red phone, and someone came and talked to me. And it wasn't necessarily that she said anything I didn't already know. The effectiveness of it was the co-regulation. So having another human being there to witness what I was experiencing, and together helping me to come into a different state of emotion. Before I used the red phone, I definitely felt some shame around, needing to break silence, needing to ask for help. But then I was like, you know what? like, this is what we're designed to do. When we're just stressed, sometimes we need another person to come and sit with us, and that's really normal. So I think that I gained a little more kindness towards myself for being a mammal. As silly as that may sound, like, I think I always have had this expectation that I should be able to deal with my emotions completely on my own. I shouldn't need anyone else's help. And that's just such crap, right? Like, we need other people, and that's how we were designed. So, lesson learned, co-regulation is normal and really okay. And it also feels really good. So, don't be afraid to reach out. Point number 2, doing nothing is okay. In our society, right, oftentimes our productivity is how we measure our worth. What do you do for a living? How much money do you make? What's your output? What have you accomplished so far? And that can be a lot of pressure. And truthfully, for many thousands of years, human beings didn't operate under that paradigm. You worked to get your needs met, but there wasn't this weird connection between our self-image and like our net worth or our job title, and it creates some really unhealthy dynamics in our minds and in our societies. Retreat is a really different kind of place where, for much of the day, we're literally just sitting around. I mean, we are doing something, right, up here. We're meditating. But it's really, really counter to our programming as modern Western folks. We are often taught to ignore our body, to ignore our emotional needs, and to just push, work. So many people work, 60, 80 hours a week. And there's so little space these days for people to just be. And I knew before I went on retreat that I had been pushing too hard with my body, with my mind, and I was reminded of how crucial it is to simply allow time for doing nothing. Point number 3, the difference of metta versus clinging. So neither of those words might make any sense to you, so I'm going to break it down. Metta, or loving kindness, is a quality that in a lot of Buddhist practice we work to cultivate. So you could think of it this way. Like, imagine that you have a cat or a dog and you just really, really love this creature, or it could be like a small child. And you just are sitting with this creature or this person, and they're maybe on your lap, and maybe you're petting them, or you're, playing with a child, and you just feel delighted to be around them, and it feels so easy to be with them. That is the feeling of metta. So let's contrast that a moment. Think in your mind, perhaps you have a crush on someone, right? They're super cute. Maybe, it's a person at work or a person you see somewhere, and, you have started fantasizing about what it would be like to get to know this person, and you start to Facebook stalk them, and you're like, who's that's liking all their photos? And there's this sense of like, of this attachment of like really wanting a certain outcome, right? Like, you're not just genuinely interested in this person as just a human being, right? You're like, I want us to blank, right? Whether that's have sex or date or get married, right? You have a specific agenda and you have a goal. And as you observe this person, anything that threatens that image of what you have starts to feel really constricting, and we're not necessarily just unconditionally feeling at ease or feeling comfortable, right? If anything, we're feeling often quite uncomfortable. I was thinking a lot about the difference between these two experiences, both in relationship to romantic or sexual interest with people, and also with my cats. So for those who don't know, I've had to be separated from my cats on and off a bit since I've moved to the East Coast. They're currently living with my parents, and so I don't get to see them very often. And that's brought up a lot of suffering for me. And I think a lot of it, though, is some of it is that second arrow, right? Where, like, of course it's going to hurt being away. But then I start to really fight against reality. Well, it's not fair. It's not fair that we're separated. It shouldn't be this way. And that makes it even worse, right? And I thought to myself, I was like, you know, what would be the difference between that expansiveness of the metta versus, this longing and this clinging that feels so tight and uncomfortable for my cats, and I think I explored both experiences and was like, I really prefer the meta. I prefer not fighting reality, right? Allowing things to be as they are and just experiencing the love part, right? Like it felt so much better and it felt like more open and inviting. And then I was thinking about that in terms, I also had like a little, we call it a Vipassana romance, right? Where there's someone on the retreat that you find attractive and they just keep appearing everywhere in front of you and you're like, woo. And I could feel that constriction happening. And it was like, what is it like if I open up the space a little bit, right? If I don't get invested in a particular outcome and I simply say, you know what? I wish you well. It's nice being around you. Whatever ends up happening, you might open your mouth at the end of the retreat and say, Nickelback is my favorite band and my hero is Dane Cook, and then gone. But just allowing that love to not be attached to a particular outcome or not to be fighting reality. I don't know if any of that made any sense to y'all, but it was a really profound experience for me, kind of working with the difference between those two, and that's something that I will obviously continue to explore, and who knows, maybe I'll have more to say about that in the future. Item number 4, allowing difference to unfold. So what I mean by that is not tending to compare experience, right? It's really easy. Like, so say last year I went on the same retreat. So it was the same teachers, same place, same time. And so coming back this year, right, I had a point of comparison. So it was like, oh, well, do I like my yogi job better this year or last year, right? Like, what about the Dharma talks, or, is the weather different? What about my room this time? Is it better or worse, right? Our mind's tendency is to compare, to evaluate all these different pieces. However, when we do this, right, sometimes we create a little extra suffering, because if I'm like, oh, well, last year's dinner was way better when they had that one type of pasta, right, then all of a sudden I'm no longer in the present moment, right, and I'm not able to enjoy what this new experience has to offer because I'm too busy remembering what happened last year. I noticed this tendency a lot. And it was really interesting how, as I would start to compare, I could feel the constriction happening. I could feel the suffering start to creep in. And it was really interesting to pause and say, okay, so that's how it was last year. How is it right now? Is it okay that now is different than then? Is there something that I'm enjoying that's pleasant now? And even if this specific one thing, isn't as pleasant now, is that still okay? Am I still okay? For instance, my yogi job last year was very special. We had 3 of us working together doing pot washing, and we had a really lovely, intimate experience. I had a lot of great moments of practice doing my yogi job, and we all 3 of us really connected in those moments. And this year, I just, I didn't feel a sense of attunement in that special kind of way with my yogi job partner. Granted, they were a great yogi job partner. They always showed up on time. They worked very hard. I feel like we worked well together, but there just wasn't that little extra special connection. And it was so tempting to be like, it's not as good as last year, but appreciating, it is different. And that's okay. It was a really useful experience. So I would encourage you to notice that urge to compare and just get curious about it. One of my teachers had a great way of saying it, and he would just say, right now, it's like this. Point number 5, appreciate incremental progress. We often, when we start a new thing, we want to see change right away, right? Like with weight loss, we're like, I want to lose 10 pounds right now, or I want to build up tons of muscle like this moment, or I want to, learn French in 3 weeks. And a lot of times in life, right, change just doesn't happen that quickly. I went on my first meditation retreat in 2016, and it's now 2019, and it was really interesting to look back at where things were in 2016 and be like, wow, what amazing progress has been made, and it was slow and over time, but when I add it all up, it's pretty incredible. And that's just 4 years, right? How much more progress can be made, if I keep practicing for 10 years, for 20 years, for 40 years. So that really encouraged me to see some of the fruits of my labor. And even from last year to this year, I noticed some pretty big changes. So last year on retreat, I had this huge emotional meltdown, like huge. It was like an emotional tornado. And it lasted, I want to say, about 3 days. It was honestly super intense and difficult. So coming in this year, I was like, oh man, I really hope I don't have one of those again. And it was kind of funny because somewhere in the middle of the retreat, all of a sudden something hit and I was like, damn it, not again. But this time around, the storm only lasted about 10 hours, right? And I think in the middle of it, I was like, oh man, I can't believe I messed up again. Like, I can't believe I feel this way. And then after it wrapped up, I was like, 10 hours is a lot less than 3 days. Like, that's progress. That's huge progress. That's less than half the time it took for things to resolve last year. And this year, I actually reached out for support, which was humongous for me. And so, it's really easy to discount the small steps that we make towards progress, but those really matter. So if you got up this morning and you brushed your teeth and you got out of bed and, wrote an email, right? Like, that could be amazing for you, right? Maybe pat yourself on the back or say, good job, or just be kind to yourself when you do those little things that felt really, really difficult in the moment. Because any progress is progress. It's still progress, no matter how infinitesimal it is. And if you make a millimeter of progress every day, eventually that's going to add up. So keep at it. When I think about what my meditation practice has given me or what I've been able to let go of, right, I'm more patient, I'm kinder. Some of my important life relationships have really improved. I feel more able to regulate my emotions. There's a lot that I have really gained, and there's a lot that I look forward to working on myself and in the world through my practice. So those are a few things that I learned on retreat this year or explored in that space. And so I hope that gives you a sense of what it is that you can do on retreat, and also to know that everyone's retreats look different. All of my retreats look different from year to year. And so it's a really wonderful space to explore yourself, to explore the nature of reality. And it's not for everyone. So if it's not something you're interested in, that's okay. But if you are, I think it's a really worthwhile way to spend your time and energy. Something else I'd like to announce is that I've decided to do a 100-day meditation challenge. So in the past, I've always struggled to be consistent with daily practice. For much of the last few years, I've definitely practiced more days than not. So often, like 4 to 6 days per week, but I'd really like to build the habit of practicing every day. And some days that might be only 5 minutes of practice, because sometimes life gets a little bananas, and that's okay. And I know that for me, having accountability is something that really helps me to follow through and be disciplined on my commitments. So I'm sharing with all of you that my plan is, starting today for the next 100 days, to spend at least 5 minutes on my cushion. And I'm really excited because I know that this is something that will yield benefit for me. And let me know if you're interested in joining, or if you just want more information about meditation or mindfulness. I'd be happy to share more. And I'm excited to see what unfolds. Thanks for listening to me ramble about my retreat. I know that sometimes these concepts are really hard to explain, so I hope that this made sense to you. And please let me know if you have questions or thoughts, or if you want information about going on retreat. I'm happy to share. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you, and have a good day.